Welcome to another edition of the Jayhawker Podcast. I am Greg Gurley along with Wayne Simien. The Jayhawker Podcast brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System. What a great and glorious time it is to be a Jayhawk and a Chiefs fan. Before we get into our Hawk Talk, our Jayhawk Talk, how about the week that we've had starting, let's go back to last Saturday, winning at Oklahoma. Then we had that great off day, Super Bowl champ Kansas City Chiefs go on to Stillwater to beat the Cowboys. But talk about, give me a little, you got about 9 kids. Talk about what you did on Super Bowl Sunday with your family and how much fun it was for the Simiens as a Chiefs fan.
Oh, yeah, so much fun. We got connected with a couple other families, the Snyder family, the Wright family. So I want to say there was about 15 kids total with some adults and shared some appetizers, and of course we're all huddled up around the big screen TV, excited about the Chiefs.
Were you ever
Super
nervous?
Bowl appearance. I wasn't nervous. I don't get nervous with Patrick Mahomes anymore. I don't get nervous with Andy Reid anymore. I was actually relieved when he got hurt at the end of the second half or the first half.
You're going to explain that one.
Well, number one, I knew he was coming back. Come on, dudes don't leave games, the Super Bowl game, right? So we knew he was coming back. And then also, I really appreciated in the AFC Championship game when he was, again, playing on the hurt ankle, the conservative play calling that kept him in the pocket, that got Pacheco involved, that got McKinnon involved, check down receivers. Because sometimes I feel like Patrick Mahomes gets bored, and then he tries to create things and make things a little bit harder than they really are. And so when he got hurt, I was fairly relieved because I knew Andy knew how to dial him and rein him back in like we saw in the AFC Championship game, and lo and behold, it proved to be true.
Yeah, and he just gets rid of it so quick. So he's not going to get sacked because he'll get it and go, and Kelsey was always open. We got to experience a little bit a couple weeks ago when Travis Kelsey showed up. Yeah. And it was so cool because that was, 10 days before the Super Bowl? He had a ball in Lawrence, and Lawrence has kind of become – we're kind of the professional basketball team of Kansas City, and I know a lot of our neighbors don't like the fact that people want to come to Allen Fieldhouse, but Travis Kelsey wanted to come to see the Jayhawks play.
Hey, and you remember when he came into the locker room after the game, Coach Self was giving him some crap because I think the over-under for the number of catches that he would have in the Super Bowl was maybe 4, right? Right. Yeah, and Coach was kind of giving him some crap about how low that number was, and he had some pretty colorful commentary that he would catch more than 4, make more than 4 catches during that game, and he made good on that.
Little pub for him. He was on the Jimmy Fallon show last night, and he announced that he's going to host Saturday Night Live in a couple weeks.
Pretty legit.
How about that?
That's a nice run.
But what a great guy. I remember when he came into the coach's locker room right before Bill and I did our interview, and he was just so natural and just easy. Like he was a superstar, but it was just like one of the guys. And I don't know, I'm not around other guys like that, but he just seemed easy.
And one of the guys that's taken a chip on the shoulder and turned it into a championship. I think he and the rest of the Chiefs crew didn't quite like being counted out once Tyreek Hill left, and some other up-and-coming quarterbacks, which ended up turning into being a great narrative because I think people outside the Kansas City area had us counted out, but I don't think anyone here wearing red and gold didn't think that this wasn't a possibility, and the confetti fell.
No, it fell, and it was just such a – I was in Denver with my daughter. Amy and I watched it at my daughter's apartment in Denver, and it was just the 4 of us, and we just had a great time. And I explained to her, I go, you don't understand as a Kansas Cityan how cool this is. 2015, Royals win the World Series. 2018, Kansas goes to the Final Four. 19, the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. 22, the Jayhawks win a national title, and then – the Chiefs win another Super Bowl.
You're running out of fingers there.
You're running out of fingers.
Hey, guess what? Then we got the World Cup bid, and even better, we got a new airport. Come on,
we're winning. We got the draft.
The draft? Are you kidding me? I'm out of fingers right now. I mean, we're doing it, Kansas City. We're doing it.
People are, you and I grew up in some not tough times, but
no, they were
as
tough.
far as sports,
tough.
As far as sports goes,
tough.
The Royals, the Chiefs, and I've been to Arrowhead probably 250 times in my life, and I've been there a lot when there was 30,000 people there, and so it's so cool to be around a dynasty. Like I now see what people in New England felt like for so many years. We are that team now, and we are that region
I kind of barked at my kids thinking, like, you guys don't deserve this. You
Right.
guys just show up, and all of a sudden, championships and multiple franchises, and you don't remember. You didn't have to go through the agony that I had to go through.
The Lynn Elliott missing a field goal against the Colts. I was like, coolest day. But this is the Jayhawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System. Great talk about the Chiefs, but on to the Jayhawks, which is why we're here. Road trip to Bill Self's home state. We go down to Oklahoma, start off really slow. It was another noon game, and the Saturday before we were in Ames for an 11 o'clock start, and we didn't play very well. We had 20 turnovers. We just looked like we didn't have it, and it started out that way in Norman. We were down 10-4. I think we scored 4 points in 8 minutes. We're like, oh, here we go again. And then something clicked, and Jay Will started to get off. Grady started to go. And we really got in a rhythm and ended up winning by double digits. And that was a win that we had to get, and a win. You know, we talked about the Texas game the Monday before, that it was a must win, even though no one said that except you and I. But it really was a must win. And then to back it up with a good road win against a team that had beat Alabama, the number one ranked team in the country right now, but beat Alabama by 30. And Kansas was able to go down there and do it. And one last thing, that ran our lifetime record in Norman to 22-20, which was very surprising to me. Do you remember your record in Norman?
I don't. I didn't know that it was that.
It was that close. It kind of snuck up on me. But now, and we may not play them next year in Norman. That might have been our last game ever in Norman. So luckily, at the time we were 21-20. Luckily, we went to 22-0, so it wasn't 500.
Well, I'll take that because, you know, though we might not be saying every game is a must-win, you're thinking about it in the sense of the opportunity to be able to win a Big 12 championship, and just how close the race is and how there's so much, more work to be done. We got off to a bad start. I don't think we can afford to keep getting off the bad starts like that.
No.
But one thing that I do appreciate about that game, and Coach Self teams love this, is that even when we're playing bad, he wants to make and force the other team to play bad, which after that first maybe 8-minute stretch that Oklahoma started out with, man, we stifled them.
We turned them over.
We turned them over. They finished scoring under 65 points, which is a gritty, grinded-out type of game. And then, of course, the thing that we've all been waiting for, and particularly me, from the player that had his breakout game finally, Ernest Udeh.
Yeah. He's had kind of a breakout
Yeah, that was
month.
a breakout game for him.
Yeah. He's 6'11", 7'4" wingspan. You're obviously you love Ernest, you love Zuby, we all do. And, you know, Zuby was available in that game, but it was going to be Ernest who was going to get the first look, and, man, was he great. He just changes the game with his length, with his activity, with his knowledge of where, you know, he's just active. You know, when you don't know what you're doing, what do the coaches tell you to do? Move, be active, and that's what Ernest does. He got some deflection, had some blocked shots. He changes shots, and his rim running off the little pick and roll was superior. I mean, it looked like a seasoned vet with him and DeJuan, him and Kevin, him and Jay Will. So that emergence of Ernest off the bench gives us a whole nother look.
You know, I think a lot of people maybe thought that was like a flip of a switch where he just had that breakout game. I think that he had been building towards that game. Yeah. Now, he hadn't had the type of minutes and productivity in the games leading up to that, but he had stacked some good reps, some good minutes, some good practices where it almost felt volcanic to a sense where it was like it was dormant, there's some rumbling, and you knew that it was only a matter of time to where he would have that breakout type performance. Now, I will say that the matchup lended to his advantage because he is so athletic. And the Oklahoma bigs, they don't have anyone on their roster that plays above the rim.
No.
So as DeJuan was able to get downhill and kind of that center court ball screen and able to lob it up, Ernest was in another stratosphere that the Oklahoma defenders couldn't match. Now we saw a different look of that when we played Oklahoma State a few days later with Cisse, and he wasn't nearly as effective in that. And so I think that there's that matchup lended itself to being in his favor, to him being able to have that type of game.
I think where I point to Ernest, his coming out party was Kentucky. And there's injuries. The game quote unquote, didn't mean anything to some because it wasn't a league game, but it meant something. But Bill could play Ernest, and Ernest knew he wasn't coming out because Bill, there were some injuries, and he was going to get an opportunity to play with a free mind, not worry about freshmen. You worry about, you make a mistake, you get pulled. We're going through that right now with MJ. And, he knows that if he makes a mistake, he's probably going to get pulled. And so you play differently. But Ernest, I think, went into that game and really impacted that game in a positive way with playing with a free mind and just running and jumping and having fun like he did in high school. And that's what Bill says all the time. Hey, Wayne, what would you have done in high school? I would have shot it. Well, what's different now? We recruited you because you were a hell of a high school player. And we want you to do those same things here within the offense and within the flow. And that's what I think Ernest is finally, mid-February, comfortable with.
Yeah, and I remember Zach Clements had a big game like that last year as well, where you have these typical guys that find a way to help us win a game. Yeah. And that was certainly the case. And not only did he do it on the offensive end, but he was a presence defensively, with the shot blocking, with the shot alterations, and also with his rebounding in that matchup. And hopefully we can continue to see him build on top of that down the rest of the conference stretch.
So that was last Saturday. Then we had the fun day on Sunday with the Super Bowl. Our team, that was a noon game. They get home 4 or 5 o'clock on Saturday, a couple nights in their own bed, right back on the road on Monday to go to Stillwater against, if not the hottest team in the Big 12, I think that's probably Baylor, but the second hottest. I mean, Oklahoma State was playing at a high level, even with the injury to Avery Anderson. That almost, nothing against Avery Anderson, but they've almost played better without him.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens, but he's a big-time player for them. So we go down there and had to, if we wanted to stay in this race, we talk about must-wins and all that. That's terms that we use because your ultimate goal, my ultimate goal, Bill's, the whole team, their ultimate goal is to what? Win a league championship. And
it's how we break huddles. Big 12 champs.
Big 12 champs. And so you have to win the games you're supposed to win. That was another one that Kansas was favored in, if you look at it that way. But Oklahoma State was a hot team, and that was another game that kind of started off not slow because we played from out front for a little bit, then they played from out front. And then there was a lull of about 3 or 4 minutes on both sides. They turned the ball over. We turned it over on about 4 or 5 straight possessions. Then Joe Yesufu hits a 3. And then the play of the game, in my opinion, and coincidentally is our call of the week, was at the end of the half when I think DeJuan found, whoever found him, it was Grady Dick in the corner for a rainbow 3. I mean, about as high arcing of a shot. And from my vantage point, I'm like, I don't know. And it perfectly goes to the net. We roll into the locker room with a lot of confidence. Here is your Jayhawker Podcast Call of the Week, as brought to you by Brian Haney and one Greg Gurley.
Here comes Harris, throws ahead to Zuby. Left side McCullough in the corner. Dick for 3. Bingo! Grady Dick to beat the buzzer. And KU will take a 2-point lead to the halftime locker room.
Wow. Hey, Jayhawk fans, this is Greg Gurley here on the Jayhawker Podcast. I want to tell you about the President Hotel. Downtown Kansas City, just steps away from the Power and Light District and the T-Mobile Center. It will be the official hotel of the Kansas Jayhawks this year for the Big 12 tournament and all things Kansas City whenever the Jayhawks are in town. Philip Stranad, the GM down there, does an unbelievable job. Give them a call at 816-221-9490. Book their stay and play package, breakfast for 2, parking for 1 vehicle, and a welcome gift. It's my favorite place. I stay there all the time. So does Wayne. Fully renovated hotel. The drum room is fantastic. Go down there for my favorite, a Manhattan on the rocks with a little bullet rye. But the President Hotel, the official hotel of the Jayhawker Podcast.
It was late, and one of my patients was having trouble sleeping. He was feeling uneasy, he told me. I asked him, is there anything I can do to help? I'm pretty sure he's the only patient ever to ask me to dance at 2 a.m. But sometimes, being the best nurse I can be is just being the best person I can be.
Welcome back to the Jayhawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System. We're in the midst of talking about the Oklahoma State win. and what that meant to our program and to individual guys. It was another game where Jay Will, I think, ended up with 18, but it was a quiet 18. And I'm not going to say the emergence of Grady Dick because he's been around all year, but, man, was he special. That 3 at the end of the half kind of propelled his confidence and his momentum into the second half, and he got us out to that lead in the first 4 minutes of the second half.
Gallagher-Iba Arena is one of my favorite places to play when I was a player. It's as juiced of an environment.
You were always new Gallagher, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you never saw old Gallagher?
No, it was
old
better.
Gallagher was better, but it's still really, really good. Picture 6,000 less seats, and it was loud. It had a short roof. It wasn't a very tall roof. It was outside Allenfield. That's the loudest. So
in all the games you called, would you categorize Gallagher-Iba as a shooter's arena?
Yes.
Because I've seen some big-time performances there.
They have soft rims. When I go to shoot around, I watch those rims. As a shooter, you're like, these are kind of soft rims. So, yes, there's been some big-time offensive outputs in Gallagher-Iba.
Speaking to, Oklahoma State's start that game where they were just kicking the ball. And Bryce Thompson, of course, who's always, juiced to play against his former team. Some guys.
His games against Kansas and Kansas State, if he just played those games, he'd be an All-American.
Yeah, and a lot of the shots that they were making were all highly contested shots. And so even though –
You know what it reminded me of? The Miami game in the first half. We actually played pretty good defense against Miami, and McGusty and Wong and all those guys were making guarded shots. That's why at halftime I'm like, all right.
We're down 5.
The percentages are going to play itself out, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. We'll take being down 5 in that because they're making some really difficult contested shots, and it's certainly an impressive offensive performance. But then going down 5, you're thinking, hey, it's only a matter of time. Yeah. Obviously Grady had an elite performance there, leaning back to the thought earlier about it really being a shooter's gym. I mean, basket looked really, really big. But I was never really concerned because I felt once we got the lead, Oklahoma State doesn't have a defensive disposition that's honed in enough to really get stops. They're more of a trading
without Avery Anderson
team.
too.
Right, and so once we kind of got in a trading basket scenario and we took care of the basketball and we got open looks and one of my favorite plays was when Zuby caught the ball in traffic, which is a big deal, right? I mean, a freshman just catching the basketball, game on the line around 3 defenders that have been active and athletic, and then finding Grady Dick on the wing for another long 3-point shot. I think that was one of the daggers that kind of solidified that win.
And what I love about that play was about 2 minutes prior to that, he had a little guy matched up on him. We threw him the ball, and he fumbled it out of bounds. There was a mismatch. We got to go to him. They kind of reluctantly threw it to him. And then 2 minutes later, he gets that pass. And he kind of fumbled it because there were 3 guys around him. But freshmen can go one of 2 ways, right?
And Ernest was fouled out. Now, had Ernest not been fouled out, there might have been a sub there.
But Zuby caught it, gathered, realized he was under the basket, and made the right play. He pitched it out to Grady. He made a 3. And that was when Oklahoma State was going on a little mini run. And those little plays like that with the freshmen and quality minutes, teaching moments from 2 minutes before, he gathered, he played it calmly, and he pitched it out. And that's just one of those plays in the maturation of freshmen that I'll point to over the next month or so that's going to only give him confidence.
Yeah,
and the coach's confidence in him.
Man, and another confidence builder was for Kevin McCullough, who's labored offensively the last 2 or 3 games and even has turned that laboring on offense into not being as effective as we need him to be on defense. I thought he was terrific.
He was the player of the game, in my opinion, because when Jay Will got into foul trouble, KJ was in foul trouble. I looked at it, and DeJuan had just tweaked his ankle. So you had you had no Jay Will, you had no DeJuan. Kevin's the guy, right? And like you said, offensively at times challenged. He's a skilled offensive player. He just hadn't been making shots. He makes big shots, but his percentages aren't there. He gets a lot of wide open looks because of all the attention that goes to Grady and Jay Will. But what I thought was great, I think they had cut it to 5, and he goes on a 6-0 run by himself. And he had a nice move to the bucket on the left side. He had a little mid-range jumper. Then he had an and one. It might have been a 7-0 run. But Kevin McCullough defensively was great.
Yeah, because in that stretch that you just described, he forced a turnover, he got the rebound, drove it coast to coast, which initiated the break, and was able to score there at the basket. So it's great to see him be able to initiate and be active on both sides of the basketball.
And I think the common theme that you and I are talking about right now, who have we talked about? Kind of everybody but
Jay Will.
Jay Will. He's going to be an All-American, might be the player of the year in our conference, go up in the rafters with guys like you. And it's not like Jalen's been bad, but teams are now gearing everything to stop Jalen. And so we've talked so much about the other guys, but in this entire conversation, the only thing we've brought up Jay Will about was he's in foul trouble.
Well, this is where we get spoiled because he's done it at such a high clip for the duration of, a very difficult conference season, and even prior to that, that now it's come to be what we expect out of him. And maybe we take it a little bit for granted.
Well, we're Kansas fans. We take everything for granted.
We at least got to have one guy like that.
As we look around the landscape of college basketball, at the elites, Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Michigan State, maybe throw Michigan at that. There's some big-time programs that are bubble teams that had a lot of guys back. We didn't have a lot of guys back. We had DeJuan and Jay Will, but we got a lot of new guys. And the common denominator in all that is Bill Self. He's the great adjuster. He figures out a way to mesh everybody together. 34, is that right? I think it's 34 years in a row with 20 wins or more. Consecutive years. The year that it was the probation year after the national title. The last time we didn't win 20 games, which
pretty efficient.
I'm not bagging on Duke they've had down years. We just haven't. And that's a credit to Roy Williams and Bill Self. And Bill Self, over the last 20 years, there hasn't been a more consistent coach in the country. The records, the streaks that he's accomplished, which he, when I bring these up to him or you bring them up to him, what does he say?
He downplays
it.
Yeah.
Shut up, Wayne. Shut up, Greg. But we're going to recognize how impressive these things are 20 years from now when nobody else has come close to accomplishing, 36-0 on Big Mondays at home? Think about that. Big Monday means that you're playing a big-time matchup against a top 10 team more than likely, right? 36-0 in Allen Fieldhouse. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And all that leading to a big-time matchup against a big-time team, college game day in the house, going up against a team that was projected to win the conference, team that got us down there earlier in the year, the Baylor Bears.
And the Baylor Bears, who started out the conference season 0-3. So we talked about Oklahoma State being hot. There's no hotter team than Baylor right now. They're tied with us for first place, and this is a big-time game. Like Wayne said, College Game Day is going to be here. But the other thing that I'm excited about, and I know you are as well, I think we need to talk about Jayhawks in the NBA, where some of our guys are from last year and then years past, who's coming back. We know Christian Brown. We know Ochai. We know Cole Aldrich. We know Chris Tehan, Mitch Lightfoot from last year's team. Tyrell Reed's a fixture here.
There's still plenty of time to get calls, which we probably will.
Brandon Rush, Sharon Collins, Tyshawn Taylor. I mean, it's going to be a who's who behind the bench with you included. But this will be the first time that Christian and Ochai will have been back since the last. Well, they weren't back for late night, right? They were. No. But so cool to have them back. Ochai's starting to get some really good minutes. Started out the first 30 games. He got drafted by Cleveland, and then he got traded before the opening night in the Donovan Mitchell deal. Goes to Utah. Utah had a heck of a start. And Ochai wasn't necessarily in those plans early.
Spent some time in the G League, which is tough.
Which is tough on anybody. But then he comes back, and the last month or so, he's been getting a consistent 20, 25 minutes a game. He's producing. His minutes, his points per minute are up.
Everything's up.
So he's showing while he was drafted as a lottery pick. And then Christian Brown, could you ask for a better situation? That's the best team in the Western Conference. He's getting real minutes. He's producing. He's turned into arguably one of their best defensive players.
And he has real highlights, too. You'll see him.
I watched a deal on Twitter
highlights
the other day, and it was all of his dunks this year. Not all of them, but, man. And we saw that here, his athleticism, but it's almost ticked up a notch in the league.
It's been so great to be able to think about how those guys are trending. And then I don't want to understate the importance of those guys coming back during All-Star break because the NBA season is grueling, absolutely grueling. Long road trips, back-to-backs. Obviously jockeying for a playoff position, seedings, fighting your way through the trade deadline, and we did see several Jayhawks get shifted and moved around now that Devontae Graham is a San Antonio Spur.
Did you see his debut?
Yeah, had a nice little debut there.
History of the San Antonio Spurs, most points scored in a Spurs debut.
Yeah, hey, we'll take that. Come on,
Graham
for the Jayhawks, man. R.C. Buford, another great Jayhawk running that organization down there.
He'll be here tomorrow.
But when those guys choose to take basically their only weekend off during a grueling NBA season, and they choose to come back to Lawrence, Kansas. They could be in Cabo, they could be in L.A., they could be at the All-Star games themselves, enjoying the festivities and the parties. But the fact that they choose to come back to cold, snowy Lawrence, Kansas in February, I think really is a testament to how great this place is.
Well, we've talked about it before. You get it and I get it, but I don't think everyone understands, especially guys that are playing in the NBA. They don't realize until they're gone how well they are treated here and how loved they are. I guarantee you Christian and Ochai are going to have an ear-to-ear grin, seeing everybody from the past and just catching up because you play in the NBA.
It's not the same.
It's different.
It's not the same.
You get on a bus, you get on a plane, you go to a hotel, you might go to a dinner. You're young, you may not hang out with the vets, you may not want to hang out with certain guys, so you're kind of by yourself a lot, right?
Yeah, you got to find your way.
And you're living in a town you're not used to. I mean, Ochai's in Salt Lake, CB's in Denver. Not that they're bored or lonely, but there's a little bit of that.
There's a big adjustment period.
So when you come back, it's just like open arms, and from managers to doctors to administrators, that they're going to have an ear-to-ear grin, and that's why I think they come back. They still might go to Cabo because now the NBA All-Star break is there was games last night, but most teams played on Wednesday, and they don't go back until next Friday. So even CB and Och could hop on a bird and get a little sand in them.
Hopefully they get out. But I would actually make an argument for CB being a part of the Rising Stars game. I actually think he got snubbed out of that, but at least he gets a chance to come back here. And then you talk about how we got frenzied up earlier and not talking about the biggest star currently for the Kansas Jayhawks, which is Jay Will. We forget about him. Well, in all of our NBA talk, who have we forgotten to mention?
Embiid.
Joel Embiid, who is having a Hall of Fame career already that we've seen, but is also, still in the conversation for MVP. I mean, he's one of the most dominant players for a stretch of years in the NBA, which is unreal.
The question would be, who's a better offensive talent, Kevin Durant or Joel Embiid? Kevin Durant, to me, is probably the best scorer, but I don't know how you guard Joe. If Joe decides to post up every possession, he could have 70 points. Because how do you defend? He's massive. He's athletic. He's got all the ball skills. He's got great touch. He's a great free throw shooter. I think Kevin Durant's a better scorer, but Joe's right there with him.
Well, I mean, to that question, I would say out of those two right now, the best ability is availability. And I'm really glad that this is probably one of the healthiest seasons that Embiid has had. Seeing him being able to develop, obviously we knew what type of force he was in the post. In the NBA is a little bit different because, teams hone in on you, double teams come. Man, he's been able to develop his mid-range game in a way that avoids the double teams, in a way that helps him to get to the foul line, in a way that doesn't put as much wear and tear on his body. There's been quite an adjustment that's going to extend the longevity of his career, but also has helped him, be not just an occasional all-star, which we've had, but a perennial all-star that's having a Hall of Fame-like campaign.
And he's got a little chip on his shoulder because he, like a lot of us, thought he was the MVP.
I think he got snubbed.
He got snubbed last year. And so I think – and he called out some of the people that voted that didn't vote for him. Mm-hmm. So he's playing with the little chip, which only makes him more dangerous. And this year's no different. I mean, Jokic is right there, Giannis, but I just don't know who's a more dominant force offensively. And you brought up a good point. He's more dominant than Kevin Durant because he's been hurt. But Kevin Durant with the ball in his hands, 25 feet away from the basket, is damn near unguardable.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's true. It's true.
His performance here, whatever year that was, like 2004, I've never seen a better performance by a visiting player than that first half with Kevin Durant.
Hey, we've been talking about some of the Jayhawk players in the NBA, but, man, we got some coaches in the NBA that are doing well. How about Aaron Miles, who's going to be on the bench coaching in the NBA All-Star game?
Yeah.
The Boston Celtics.
Yeah. Aaron's done unbelievable. One of your best friends, and he was here for a year and kind of got a dose of what college basketball coaching was going to be like, and he's been able to parlay that into the NBA, and he's a fixture, a future head coach, one of the all-time great guys. But Aaron, like you said, it's going to be coaching in an all-star game. Look at Jock Vaughn. I mean, what's the common theme there? A couple of point guards. Point guards have it. Jock kind of got it looked like he got a really good deal because he was given the keys to the castle with Kyrie, Durant, and Ben Simmons, and he did a great job. Did way better than Steve Nash, was trending to be the coach of the year in the NBA, probably.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
Long
and
season.
then 5 days before the draft deadline, Kyrie said he wants out. Then that snowballed into Kevin, and now Jock's back to coaching the Nets without two of the best players in the league.
I actually like it better. I like it better because
I wonder if Jock would say that.
Well, it would be interesting. I'd really like to ask him that. I don't know if he could publicly say it, but, the NBA is such a players' league that when you have superstars like a Kyrie, like a Kevin Durant, very rarely do those guys allow coaches to actually coach them. We saw it with them having the leverage to be able to choose to hire Steve Nash, which didn't work out. He was there, and they bumped heads, and it didn't work out. And then, you insert, Jock Vaughn to the top seat, to the top chair. Obviously, him doing what he can. But now, I'm actually thinking that it could be addition by subtraction when it comes to Jock being able to coach that team the way he wants.
True.
Because now we've got young, hungry guys. We've got a budding star like a Mikal Bridges that was coming from
45
the Phoenix Suns, we had Jay Wright on the other day. He's one of my all-time favorite Villanova Wildcats, if we're allowed to have one of those. I don't know.
I don't know if we're allowed to have one.
We beat it. We got a pretty good record again. We can have those. Mikal Bridges, anyways. One, just one. I'll take Mikal Bridges if I have one. And so I'm actually thinking that it could be a better situation for Jock because they've got young players that will allow themselves to be coached. They've got cap room.
Well, he's earned the right. Great city. He's earned the right to a long-term deal. I don't know where he's at right now. I know
he signed the 2-year deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he deserves a 5 or 6 year deal because it's not. Everybody thinks it's just plug and play. Like you can just put Steve Nash in there because he was a great player. Doesn't mean he's going to be a great coach. Jock's been doing it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I know that Durant and some of those guys wanted Jock to get the job before Steve Nash. They decided to give it to Nash. It just didn't work out. He took the exact same guys and was successful with them that Steve Nash couldn't do. So it shows that there's importance in the fact that he knows how to coach guys. It's one thing to just roll it out and say go, but there has to be, you can't let you just can't let them to have no rules and all that. Not that Steve Nash did that, but whatever Jock did or whatever he does, it worked.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to see him continue on that trajectory.
Before we get on to Baylor, a few more. You already brought up R.C. Buford, who might go down as one of the best general managers in all of NBA basketball. You got Kevin Pritchard. You got Nick Collison, who's an up-and-comer with Oklahoma City.
Milt Newton,
who was just here for the Texas game. Yeah. So we got a ton of Jayhawks that are in front office roles, a ton that are in obviously coaching roles.
How about scouting? Steve Woodbury in scouting, Bill Pope in scouting, yep. Nick Collison is obviously involved in that. Drew Gooden, the play-by-play guy for the Washington Wizards. Yep. So we've got them still scattered all around. But
on to the game tomorrow, the Baylor Bears. They've got a trio of guards, just like they did when they won the national title. Flagler and George are special. George is he's a lottery pick, I think. He didn't have a great game against us down there, but you got to keep an eye on him. He's really, really good. And Flagler can flat out score the ball. I mean, he's a transfer from a small school that has proven that just because they don't see the talent right out of high school, that guy could play. I mean, Flagler is a player. He's a professional scorer. Will he play in the NBA? I don't know. Maybe a little undersized. He's going to give it a good shot because he's really, really good. But they've got Scott Drew's done a great job of just kind of getting that talent in there. I mean, when you look at Mitchell, Teague, and those guys from a couple years ago, he's done it again. They started out poorly, but won 9 out of the last 10. And this is a dangerous game for us because we're on an uptick. We saw what happened a few Saturdays ago when we thought, it was that TCU game. We lose by 20. That could happen again tomorrow. This is the type of team that can score a lot of points, so we got to be ready. Not like our guys aren't going to be ready, but looking forward to tomorrow, national stage, college game day. The whole world's going to be watching, and I'm glad that college game day decided to come because it showcases the Big 12. The 2 best in the Big 12, or at least 2 out of the 3 best, if you count Texas, in the Big 12, the most dominant conference in college basketball in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, how spoiled are we? Because not many institutions out there get a chance to host 2 game days, college football game day and basketball game day, in the same calendar year. Yeah. So that's pretty special. And, of course, the campus and the environment are going to be juiced. Talking about Baylor, man, they do have a 3-headed monster there. It'll be interesting to see what type of defensive adjustments Coach Self decides to make. Thinking back to the outcome in Waco, traditionally KU, Coach Self system likes to switch 4, likes to switch 5. We saw in Waco, it was only a matter of time. It was almost like they were hunting their matchup. They were hunting their one-on-one matchup to where, okay, now we've got KJ Adams on George, and now we've got Grady Dick on Flagler. Okay, now it's take them time.
And then when there were mismatches and we would go double-team the post, they were ready. And they were ready to throw the pass to the shooter, and they made shots. And that's what really hurt us in that first half.
Yeah, so I'm looking to see if there'll be some adjustments made in that. I would project that we will make an emphasis in guarding the three-point line far more than protecting the paint. I imagine this being a game where KJ and Ernest and Zuby are just going to be all alone. I probably won't, forecast us, doubling the post. It might just be, those might be the 1v1 matchup that you force is going to be in the paint as opposed to what's going to happen on the wing.
But look at what we did in Stillwater. We didn't double team, and Boone went off. They left KJ on an island, got him in foul trouble, and Boone had, I think, 16 in that first half. So it'll be interesting to see. They don't have a Caleb Boone. They got a Flo Thamba who's bigger than Boone, but not a super skilled big.
He's capable, though.
He's capable. He's been around a long, long time, but Bill's got to decide what they're going to do because it's a well-coached team. Double teams they've seen, they're going to whip it around quick and get an open shot if we do it. So that'll be something to watch for.
Hey, who do you want, pick your poison. Who do you want to beat you? And I'm taking I would rather have Thamba beat us and go off than Adam Flagler, shoot 6 and 9
And now that we have a little more depth in our bench, we got fouls to give. We got KJ. We got Ernest. We got Zuby. I think Zach can be available. So we got some. You don't want to just foul. But I think, like you said, pick your poison. Who you want? You want George, Flagler, Cryer, or do you want Thamba? So make him beat us. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I think, obviously the bench production will come into play as well. Not that we need them to score 30 points a game or to come out and have huge offensive performances, but certainly be serviceable, be solid defensively.
Just can't have a drop-off.
Yeah, can't have a drop-off.
So Baylor game tomorrow, college game day, and then, like when you're Kansas, you have a lot of these Saturday Mondays. This is, I think, our third one. So we go to TCU, a little revenge factor. They come into our building and embarrass us. I mean, it was a beating. It was a beat down. looks like Mike Miles and Lampkin will be back for that game. Just our luck. They've been injured for 3 weeks, but
I think our guys want it that way, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
And Lampkin played the other night at Iowa State where they got beat. And they're on the struggle bus right now. TCU is – so they're going to love nothing more than to welcome us into that 7,500 capacity Schollmeyer Arena. It's not very big, but it gets pretty loud. That wasn't the case 7-8 years ago, but Jamie Dixon's got them rolling. So first things first, got to take care of business against Baylor. But if we can go on the road and beat a TCU team, you look at our remaining schedule – with West Virginia and Texas Tech, they're playing a lot better now. And I said this in an interview earlier this week. We're fortunate that we played in Lubbock and in Morgantown the first week of the year because we got 2 wins. They're playing so much better right now. We got them when they were down a little bit, and we eked out a win in Lubbock, and we beat West Virginia pretty good, but they're starting to beat some people in Morgantown.
How big was that win in Lubbock now that we look back, because they've clipped some of the top teams in the conference already, so that's looking like a even better and more important win.
On that off day between the Super Bowl and Stillwater, we were all glued to our TVs and our phones becoming big Red Raider fans when they were playing the Longhorns, and it was a crazy game. Davion Harmon was unreal. I don't know if you watched it, but they're playing, packed house, playing with some confidence, and we're going to be Texas Tech fans as other teams got to go down there as well. So just a fun week coming up. Here we are, mid-February. We're getting to the stretch run.
Yeah.
We got 5 league games left. Then we go to Kansas City for the Big 12, and I mean we're right here at the end. I mean, remember this time last year when we had a COVID makeup game, and we had like 4 games in like 7 days. It was like at Baylor, at TCU, and then 2 days later we played TCU here, and then 2 days later we played Texas here. So a little different finish for us this year. Take care of business tomorrow. Quick flip 48 hours later in Fort Worth, and we just took care of business in Oklahoma, but got a great opportunity to create a little space.
Yeah, what a cool part in the schedule where we come off the Oklahoma State win, where they're threats because they're on the road, because they both played us close here, and now we've got 2 games that are bookended on that are chip on the shoulder type games.
Yeah.
Two teams that have
Revenge.
beaten us, that we want to get a chance to get recourse for.
Good times. Let's do it again next week.
Let's do it again next week with a couple more wins. I'll meet you back here next week with a couple more wins.
We'll get a good guest on next week. Maybe we'll talk to CB and Ochai now that we'll maybe do an online thing, get them wherever they're at. But having a lot of fun doing this. Love to recap, love to preview. We got a few more things going on in Kansas athletics. Kansas baseball debuts today.
Dan Fitzgerald.
In Corpus Christi, Texas, against Valparaiso. The women are back at it this weekend. Women's golf has been great. Men's golf's out in Palm Springs right now. So a lot going on in Kansas
Women's
athletics.
tennis playing right now, playing in Arizona. I was out there earlier.
So it's a great
points.
We had a great event last night with Lance Leipold and Travis Goff in Kansas City, and really doing a great job pumping up Kansas football, trying to extend the momentum that they created this year, and whether it be season tickets or our new stadium project and Anderson upgrade. So a lot going on in Kansas athletics. You and I are a big part of all that, and need everybody out there to get involved. The Williams Fund and the Kansas Athletic Development Team, we need more donors. I mean, we are at a point where we're near the bottom in the number of donors that we have, but we're up near the top in money raised, which is great, but we need everybody. We need to boost our numbers. We need people at Memorial Stadium. We know what we got in Allen. We just need that football program to continue with their momentum, and Jayhawk Nation get behind those guys. We signed up Lance Leipold, his entire staff, all 10 assistants. Every one of them coming back. The continuity is great. We're set for some really big things. So get involved. Call me. Call Wayne. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. This has been the Jayhawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System.